PlayStation Drive is fueled by patrons over at patreon.com/YumiCapri. And we want to thank all of our patrons, including our Capremium producers, Dallas Ford, Drew Agnew from the House of Mario podcast, Jace Baldridge from twitch.tv/Baca Ridge, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team, and Jonathan Brown. You can find him over at youtube.com/GamingPurpleMonkey. Our platinum producers, Brian Scott, Robbie Bobby Miller, and Trucker Sloth. And our gold members, Argo, Brennan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Emily O'Kelly, Heather Boney, James Johnson, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Benji Kong, Marcus O'Neill, RJ Kern, Dano, Skinny Matt, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, Fulia Fuji, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you so much for all of your support. Now, on with the show. Hey everyone, it's me, Ryan Turford, and you're listening to the most PlayStation-rific podcast on the internet. It's the PlayStation Drive. I'm on a Discord call with my friend Matt Sawinski, and on our journey today, a State of Play happened and there's a whole bunch of games to talk about, so let's just jump on into the PlayStation Drive.
Happy State of Play Day, Ryan. Wow, that Bop-a-Doppo really had some gusto today.
Well, you know, I mean, it's State of Play Day, Matt. I had to, you know, put a little extra effort into it because, you know, PlayStation came out and showed some things today and didn't show others. I mean, the internet has mixed opinions about today, but you know what? I wanted to bring the hype today. I wanted to bring the hype for the PlayStation crowd and, you know, talk about all kinds of awesome stuff that PlayStation has. So it's going to be a fun day. It's going to be a fun conversation with you. I hope you are doing well. Now you're finally back home because you were at the cottage last week, I think, the last time we talked, right?
Yes, I was. I'm finally back home. Got back on Monday, went ahead and got my second COVID shot on Tuesday.
Woo!
Spent the last couple days dying in bed. But today is a much, much better day. So I'm ready.
I'm glad you're feeling better. At least it's going to be worth it. You know, it's at least we had to deal with it for a couple of days, just like me, because I talked about this on the Xbox Drive, where I was like basically in bed for like 3 days last week ever since I got the shot. Like basically like the morning I recorded with you last week, I was like, man, I can't believe I'm actually doing this, but that's okay. Anyways, we should probably talk about PlayStation because we got lots to cover this week. But before we get into all that, we should probably clean the garage a little bit. So if you like what we do and you want to support the show, of course, there's a number of ways to do that. If you don't have bucks to toss, no problem. Of course, you can support us on your podcast feed of choice. So, of course, if you leave an Apple 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we will read your review on the show. We don't have any this week, but if you leave one in the future, we will do that. Of course, if you have bucks to toss and you want to support us that way as well, patreon.com/YumiCapri is how you go do that. You get early access to this and all of our shows, as well as some exclusive content is available to you as well. So patreon.com/YumiCapri. Sign up there and get some goodies. But now, without further ado, let's grab our 8 tracks, pop them in. It is time for the playlist. And we played some games this week. Probably not as many as you'd think because of the weeks we've had. But Matt, I'm going to start with you. What did you play, my friend?
I started Scarlet Nexus. I'm on phase 3 or phase 4. I can't remember which of Yuito's story. I know you said last week that you started with Kasane.
Yep. So
I decided to go with Yuito's to have a bit of a conversation about how yours is going versus mine. So far, it's great. I love the combat. I like a lot of what the game's doing. I do have a little bit of issues with the way that their open world is designed. It's just kind of empty, in my opinion. Like the just kind of in between missions, along with like the gifting and the kind of hangout moments in between phases is just fine. I would have liked a little bit more like interactivity with the actual characters rather than like throwing a gift at them and then just going on like a little cutscene journey. Yeah. The combat itself is fantastic, and like I think the story really picks up in phase 2. I think like phase 1 is just kind of like that. It really eases you in. It's like, oh, okay, it's just another game. Phase 2 is when, in my opinion, the story really kind of kicks into gear and really leaves you like, you know, hooked and being like, what is happening next? And it's far darker than I thought. Than maybe I realized going into the game, which is not a complaint because I like it when, especially when these anime games do things a little bit differently. So I'm really happy with how the story is going so far. I feel that, and it's probably because of the 2 character structure, there are holes in the story so far that have not been filled in that should probably get filled in as you play through the other side. I don't know how much I like that as of yet, just because I feel like if I were to finish Yuito's story, which is apparently about 25 hours, and then hop into Kasane's, to go back and be like, hold on, what was going on at this part in the other story? Oh yeah, I'm like trying to remember like what's going on. So far I am enjoying the game because I think the combat and the way that everything flows is fantastic. I just wouldn't say it's the best game. It's not one of my top games of this year at this point, but I do think it's solid. Like I don't regret playing it so far. Like it's really mechanically well put together. I know you've been playing it too, Ryan. Before I talk about anything else, what are your thoughts on your time with Scarlet Nexus so far?
So I'm a little bit farther than you because I talked about it on last week's show where I had basically started it last week. So I'm about a little over 12 hours into the game so far. So
Okay.
I'm actually like fairly far into Kasane's story, at least beyond the halfway point at this point. And for just to your point, I've been really enjoying the combat. I mean, there's nothing more satisfying than taking two buses and throwing them at your enemy and basically like squashing them. I think that's
Right.
so cool. It looks really flashy. And also I really like the story in this game too, because I like a lot of darker anime that veer into different and unexpected directions. Like I'm a big Neon Genesis Evangelion fan. So, I mean, that's got to tell you everything you need to know about me. So I love kind of where the story is going. Again, it's not the most well-written story ever, but I do like the direction the story's been going in throughout the entire journey. And yeah, obviously it has a bit of a slow start as far as the story is concerned, because there's so many characters they got introduced to you to, Matt, that they want you to remember all their names. So it takes you a very long time to kind of go through that process. And that's kind of what, phase one in the prologue is kind of all about. So I do think the story definitely picks up the further you go into it. And yeah, like it's a little bit disappointing, especially with games like Persona out there with the interactions you have with the other characters. I wish there was a little bit more to them, especially because you do have like side missions associated with other characters, but like they're not really that interesting at all. Like, so I don't know if there's really much motivation for me doing that other than, again, the combat perks you get out of that. But otherwise it just feels kind of pointless, because otherwise, I mean, I'm not really like chomping at the bit basically to like learn more about these individual characters at this point, because the game's not really giving me a good reason to do so at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, like especially like when I go to the hideout now, for the most part, I used to talk to everyone kind of when I first started, but now I'm like barely talking to anyone. Like if there will be like the odd person I'll go talk to, but just because again, there hasn't been like a real reason for me to want to do that. Like the game's not encouraging me to do that. So I haven't felt like I've wanted to, like, again, not like Persona where each of those like confidant stories are like really well written and like they're very interesting. So I loved getting to know like a lot of the side characters in that game. But in Scarlet Nexus, I'm not really feeling that pull anyways, in the same way a lot of other games do. So, but yeah, I'm still really enjoying it. I think I'm a little higher on the game than you are, because I do think that it's probably the second best game I played this year. I'm pretty confident to say right now that I still liked Resident Evil 8 more than this game, which is currently my favorite game I played this year. Just because, again, I also haven't gotten to Ratchet and Clank yet, so keep that in mind when I say that. But I have really been enjoying my time with it, purely from the combat perspective. So that's kind of where I am on that, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it more in the coming weeks. So, Matt, tell me about the World Ends With You demo.
Yes, I hopped into that to check it out because I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago and I didn't have a chance to play it since we last spoke about it. So I jumped in, and I am much more optimistically excited for the game than I was before playing the demo. I don't really have any experience with the original. I played it on mobile for a little bit, but as I've said before, like I don't really click with mobile games. I don't know why. It's just I just can't do it. So I jumped into this one. And there is a lot of things that have me interested. The story seems interesting. The characters so far are great. The combat is satisfying and it's fun. I do see some problems with it, so this one will probably be like a wait until review thing for me, because it's slight, but like, and maybe this is just a victim of me playing PS5 now, especially coming right off of Ratchet and Clank. There are very slight load times in between sections, and it's enough that it feels jarring moving from area to area, along with every time you enter combat as well. There are slight load times that just kind of really, like, kind of just smash the brakes on the way that the game is moving, and especially because there'll be moments where you can run around and you can kind of grab multiple monsters to fight in like a chain battle. And rather than doing the first chain and then immediately the second monster spawn, they hit you with the battle like intro again and then go into the second thing. So it's kind of like there's these little things that the game is doing that is just kind of, you know, and like I said, I think it's just because a victim of playing a lot of PS5 that I think last gen probably wouldn't have noticed, but playing on, you know, current gen now just kind of stand out to me a little bit more. Along with the combat can be a little messy. The way that the camera works, especially because like when you're running through the hub areas, the camera is locked, you can't change it. And there were, what I found cool at first, where there was like these kind of like vignettes, like almost like comic bubbles that pop up with what the NPCs are saying, but you cannot progress to the next area until those conversations finish, regardless of whether you're interested in them or not. And usually they're just kind of filler conversations like, oh, did you hear about what happened? There's like a new curry restaurant. And like, even if you don't want to listen to it, you're blocked from progressing to the next area until the conversation finishes, because it's taking taking up such a predominant amount of your screen. And especially in combat as well, there's a lot going on at points. There can be a lot of enemies, a lot of attacks, and especially as you're able to use your attacks with your partners in tandem, there can be a lot going on and a lot can be easily missed. I got hit with a bunch of attacks sometimes. I didn't even realize that I got hit until afterwards when I saw my health was down. That being said, the combat is fun. I love the style of the game. The music is fantastic. I do have a bit of an issue with them using like vocal tracks during progression through areas, because you'll hear one song over and over and over,
God.
and then you'll hear one lyrical part over and over and over, and it's just like, even throughout the demo, which I probably spent about an hour with, I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to hear the song anymore. It's a good song, but like I keep hearing the same line over and over again. So I think there's enough there that has me curious, and ever since I stopped playing the demo, it's been in the back of my mind. It's one of those things that I keep thinking about, like, I hope this game is going to turn out, you know, and maybe the problems that I have with it now will hopefully be either solved or less of an issue when I'm actually playing the full game. But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic, but from the demo, it made me more excited, but also I am going to wait for reviews on this one, because I do think there's certain things that could make me stay away from it, depending on how the rest of the game is handled.
Yeah, especially into your point about the loading, like that really reminded me of when I was playing the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection on PS5, which is a PS4 game, where that game has built-in load times to all the games, where like, even though like the loading will be instantaneous on PS5, but it won't actually allow you to start playing until like the mandatory 10 to 15 seconds the game allots for loading to fully take place just completes. Or sometimes it's a minute and a half of loading for some levels on PS5. So it's like, yeah, and again, it's but I mean, it's the same load time in the same section for PS4. So it's obviously like just a static now loading screen to give the PS4 time to buffer, essentially. Like that's the reason it's built in on purpose, essentially. So it's just that you talking about that just really reminds me of that, because it really took me out of the experience. And since I haven't checked out this demo yet, it makes me want to maybe check this one out, since I'm not playing on PS4 currently. Maybe try it on Switch at this point, because then that won't bother you as much, because you're playing it either portably or, you know, you're used to that in that ecosystem. Whereas playing games on PS5, it is a little bit weird when you play games with some amount of loading times, or at least a lot of loading times too, like more than 10 seconds. Like every time because I play a lot of Final Fantasy 14, as people know, and sometimes even on the PS5 optimized version, it'll take you 10 seconds to load into like a raid or a dungeon, and it's not the fault of the PS5, but because of the network transmission. But even that feels like a long time. So yeah, I don't know how much I would really want to go back to that. So it's good to know that maybe that's kind of a wait and see one. I know Garrett, my co-host on the RPG Cave, my RPG podcast, he was talking about it with me this week, and he was actually really excited about it. But I know he only played it on Switch. I don't think he played it on PlayStation 5. Okay. So I think maybe it's just we're just spoiled, Matt. We're spoiled with the PlayStation 5 and all of its bells and whistles, that it's harder to go back to older games. Kind of like when we had our PS3s and it was harder to go back to PS2 games, you know, before the HD times.
I think you're spot on. Like, I think it's just a victim of getting used to the way that the ecosystem works on that system. You might be right. Maybe if I played it on Switch, it wouldn't bother me as much, just because I'm more used to it. But again, like, there is enough of the game that has me curious. The style and the music and the combat's a lot of fun. I'm just curious to see a little bit more. But I do like the fact that your save can transfer, et cetera, et cetera. So if you haven't checked out the demo yet and you are curious, I do recommend it. I don't mean to sound more negative than I am. But the game does look cool.
Well, especially too, it's a demo. So I mean, at this point, like everyone, if you're interested at all in the game, you may as well check out the demo. And if you're going to play it, you get a head start on the game essentially. So that part I really like. But anyways, we got to slam the brakes on this conversation, Matt, because it is time for some breaking news. It is State of Play Day, of course, as we alluded to in the intro. We got a new State of Play today. It actually literally just happened basically 10 minutes ago from the time we were recording this. So we're to dive into all of the exciting announcements from the State of Play today. Now, Sony did say ahead of time that this wasn't going to be the Horizon or God of War show. It was very much going to be third-party announcements, as well as some first-party exclusive stuff and updates on games we already knew about. And it very much delivered on what that promise was. So we'll go through these one at a time, Matt, and we'll talk about them as we go. So first up, Moss Book 2, which is a PSVR exclusive title. The only PSVR game I think we saw here was announced. Of course, the original Moss was like a third-person action game on PlayStation VR before. Again, I think I talked about this before, but I get really motion sick with VR, so I never really played the original Moss, and I can't remember if you actually had a VR system, Matt, or if you ever checked this one out.
I do have a VR system, and I love my VR, and I've owned Moss for ages. I just haven't played it yet, and there's absolutely no good reason for it. Everything about that game, and especially now that we've seen Book 2, just looks adorable. I love how much personality Quill has, and I mean, even like I remember leading up to the first announcement, like they talked about how they had Quill actually learn, American Sign Language so that he would communicate in different ways. Everything about this game looks totally up my alley. And now, like, seeing Book 2 announced, and this was probably honestly one of my favorite announcements from this entire thing, makes me very excited to go back and play the original to get ready for Book 2 because it looks like totally up my alley.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the gameplay looked really cool from Moss, and I've heard great things about the original one. I just wish I could play it outside VR, essentially. Like, don't get me wrong, there's probably a reason why you have to play it in VR, but for someone like me, I don't think I'll ever be able to play this game. But from what I saw, it looked really cool. It looked adorable, to your point, and I'm excited that Moss is actually getting a sequel, because I know a lot of people really like that game. And I know people were wondering if it would ever actually get a sequel, because I think the original one came out a long time ago. So it's cool that it's finally getting a sequel on PlayStation 4, so sometime soon. All right. Next up, Arcadagedden was announced. That's a title for a video game. It is out in early access right now, so you can go get the early access right now. The full game is coming sometime in 2022. This is the new game from Illfonic, who are the guys who did Friday the 13th and Predator Hunting Grounds. This looks like a very Fortnite-ish third-person shooter, but with just neon everywhere in this game. Yeah. It looked like something. I'm not really interested in this one, but what do you think about this announcement, Matt?
I'm kind of with you. I got kind of like almost like Splatoon, Knockout City, Fortnite vibes, like in that kind of realm of play. I think it looks all right. Like, I have kind of an issue with how many of these types of games we're getting seemingly all at once. The Horde mode looks fine. I mean, I do like the fact that there's PvP along with solo and co-op. There's enough there that has me curious, but I think ultimately what will end up happening in this game is the same thing that happened with Knockout City and other games of that nature. It might be cool for a couple weeks, and then it's going to fall off. If the early access is free, I'll check it out and I'll report back. But because they did say that early access is out today, but if this is a paid early access, then I'm not even going to bother thinking about it. I think it looks fine. It didn't do anything for me either way. Yeah, I mean, more than anything, I think what it felt like to me is it felt generic, and that's kind of the problem. Like, it felt so samey with other experiences that we have already that, like, it's tough to, I think, to maybe, jump into a game like this or be excited about a game like this when we have like a million other games that look like this, because everyone's trying to chase this look. So, that's why I'm like, I'm sure it might be fun, just like Knockout City was, because Knockout City, I was kind of down on it too when it first got announced, and I remember loving it as soon as it came out, and it was really fun. Exactly, yeah.
So all I can hope for with this game, especially because I know Illfonic does actually make fun games, is I'm just hoping that it's fun. So I'm with you. If the early access is free, I'll check it out. But
I actually have an answer for that. I just looked it up. The PS5 early access, at least in Canadian, is $26.99. And that's kind of a little bit more than I'm willing to spend to try it personally. Yeah.
Like, if I hear from some friends that it's fun, maybe. But at this point, I'm probably not going to do it either. like you said. So there you go. All right, next up, and this one did literally nothing for me, but we should talk about it anyways, or just mention it. Tribes of Midgard, which is a game we've already known about for a while. It's a top-down action RPG survival game. It's like a weird mashup of genres. It's got like a post-release update. We know the game's coming out soon. I'm going to put my arms up and kind of shrug at this one. I'm assuming probably the same for you, right, Matt?
Yep. Can we shrug on 3? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Oh my God, that was almost perfectly in sync, Matt. I'm glad we got there. I mean, even the best part about it is Matt can't even see me right now. Spoiler alert for the rest of the show. I'm just letting people beyond the curtain, you know? All right, next one. And this one looked pretty interesting. And this game's been out for a while, apparently on Steam, but it's making its console's debut. So Fist Forged in Shadow Torch. Really dumb name, but it's fine. Is a side-scrolling action game starring this cute little rabbit. It's coming on September 7th. Again, this came out last year on PC. From what I can tell from doing a little bit of quick research before the show started, this is a Metroidvania game focusing on a lot of melee combat because you've got a big fist that you punch things with. Hence the name Fist. But it looks like this weird, like, cool, like, sci-fi animal world. And I thought it looked pretty cool from the trailer. But what did you think about this one, Matt?
I think it looks okay. I don't know why. I have this like mental thing where as soon as I see like a rabbit in this like really hardcore looking, like almost like not cyberpunkish, but like kind of rundown world, and it's just beating the crap out of other things, my mind just this kind of disconnect, and it looks more silly for me than anything. Mm-hmm. I just think rabbits are adorable, and it looking like this hard, massive gold arm. There's just some weird discrepancy in my brain that I just can't figure out. I think like mechanically it looks cool. I liked how like some of the boss fights and stuff looked like you actually had to kind of like plan out your attacks in the way that you kind of clash in different ways. This one for me is I'm curious to see more about it. But it didn't really kind of grab me immediately. I think it kind of grabbed me more as the trailer went on, but I'm lukewarm on this one.
Yeah, like this one's definitely not a must-buy like day one for me, but it's like it's another wait for reviews kind of thing for me. Whereas like if the reviews are awesome, I'll probably check it out because it looked pretty cool, especially because I like Metroidvanias. So I love to at least check out whenever we get a new Metroidvania. I'll at least give it a look for sure. So next up, and this one I can assume we're probably going to shrug at, but you never know. You might surprise me, Matt. Hunter's Arena Legends, which is a martial arts battle royale game. I think it's got 36 players in its battle royale world, is coming to console. It's free for PlayStation Plus in August. So this is going to be one of our free games next month for PlayStation Plus. And it looks basically like a Dynasty Warriors Battle Royale weird mashup, and again, this literally did nothing for me. What do you think about this, Matt? Collective shrug, excitement.
I'm glad it's on PlayStation Plus. I would never even think about trying it otherwise. It's going to be, I think, on PS4 and PS5, and 30 players. I think is what I heard in the Battle Royale. But yeah, I'll try it because it's on Plus. Otherwise, I wouldn't have never given it the time personally.
Yeah, same thing. Same with me. Like again, I like to try out all the Plus games. So if it's on Plus, sure, I guess we'll try it maybe for a couple matches. And if it doesn't grab you, that's what the uninstall button's for. So there we go. That's what we think about that one. Next up, though, this one pretty exciting. Sifu was once again shown. Of course, this is a game we've known about for a while. It was supposed to come out this year, but it got delayed until early 2022. But we saw a lot of gameplay from this of your main character punching a bunch of people in the face. Essentially, that was pretty much what the whole trailer was, just punching people in the face. What did you think about this one, Matt?
I can't wait for this one. This is one of my most anticipated games. The movement looks like fluid but like really punchy at the same time. Like a couple times when he was like vaulting over ledges and stuff, like the game just looks so cool. It has so much attitude. I love the idea of the mechanic of like every time you die you get older, and I think like what they explained before was that like the idea is that he goes back and trains a bunch and comes back later kind of thing. So I love everything about the look of this game. I think I can't remember the last time I played like a good martial arts game. The one that immediately came to mind was like that Jackie Chan game all the way back on PS1.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm excited about this one. What are your thoughts, Ryan? Are you stoked on Sifu?
It looks pretty cool. Again, this is the type of game that I don't know if I'm going to instantly pre-order it, but I will at least, I think, check it out at some point. It really reminded me of another game it reminded me of kind of was Sleeping Dogs. Like that kind
Yes.
of, it had kind of the similar vibes of that movie. Of course, it's pretty much just a Hong Kong like kung fu movie essentially. So very Jackie Chan-esque, or like anything directed by John Woo. So yeah, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from it, and it looked cool. So yeah, I'm excited to check this one out. I'm glad that they showed more gameplay. But again, it's a little bit farther away. But that's okay. I think it's probably better because this fall is starting to turn into a very crowded fall. So I'm glad that a smaller game like this is kind of getting delayed, especially if it needs to work for sure.
Yeah.
So next up, Jet the Far Shore. I can't say words correctly, was shown. It was dated for later in 2021. This was a game where you fly a starship around some planets and you go explore stuff. That's kind of all I got from the trailer in this one. It looked fine. Again, it's another one that probably didn't do too much for me. By the look on your face, Matt, I don't know how much it did for you, but I'm going to ask anyways. What do you think about this one?
I think it looks cool. Like I like how relaxing it seems to be. It has a very it has a very specific vibe to it. I just don't think it's for me.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I mean, it's more like I don't get me wrong. I like space exploration in games, but when it's like the central mechanic, I know from playing enough games where space exploration is the central mechanic that I'm just not too interested in those games. So there you go. So there's Jet. Next up, Demon Slayer, the game based off the hit anime, was shown. It is coming out on October 15th. Again, we had already known about the release date, but they just showed some more gameplay from the game. I haven't watched Demon Slayer at all. I love UFO Table as an animation studio, so it's awesome to see more of their art make it into more games. But I don't know, the gameplay from this looked like a bajillion other anime games that we've played in the past. So I don't know if I'm really excited about this one. What about you, Matt?
I'm with you. I actually love Demon Slayer. I have watched the anime, and I'm just waiting to watch the movie. It's an incredible anime. It has insanely cool visuals. So the game does look like it's taking a lot of the visuals and bringing them over in a really great way. I'm just like you said, Ryan. I was just on an episode of the Streamcast, which is a great podcast where we talked a lot about how anime games don't ever do anything other than the 3D battle arena, which I'm desperate for them to try new stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think it's fine for some games. I just hate that every anime game follows the same structure. So I'm with you. I'm not going to play this. I think it looks cool. I think the anime is fantastic. I'm so tired of this format being shoved into every anime licensed game. I just want them to do something a little bit differently. I just want them to get a little bit riskier, make something cool instead of another 3D arena battler.
Like, I would have loved, like, maybe if they did like a Demon Slayer like turn-based RPG, because then they could have gone crazy with the visuals with it too. It was turn-based, exactly. And like if they made it like a stylish RPG in the same way that Persona 5 is, especially because this is coming to us from Sega of all companies. I'm just like,
yep.
That would have been like something like that would have been much more up my alley than what we saw here. So this just reminded me of the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games, which were fine for the first couple, but then like when I'm at the fifth one, I'm like, yeah, we probably don't need any more games in this style anymore. So there you go. Next one though, this one got me pretty excited. Lost Judgment was shown once again, a game we've known about for a while, but it is coming out on September 24th, which again, we already knew, but we saw just more gameplay from the game. And this one, I'm intrigued. I mean, even though I personally didn't really love Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is the only Yakuza game I've played, this one gets me pretty excited because I think the story looks much more interesting to me personally than what I've seen from Yakuza. And I mean, that might change because I haven't played the first one, but yeah, I'm stoked to maybe check this one out. And we'll talk about Judgment a little bit later in the show. But Matt, I saw you doing the dance. How excited are you for this?
I can't wait. I loved the first Judgment. It's so good. And I love what RGG Studios is doing now with Yakuza being their kind of brawler games and Judgment being their brawler games, and Yakuza is going to be their new turn-based stuff. So I love everything that they put out. I cannot wait for this. I love how much they seem to be doing with it, like the kind of parkour climbing. We saw, boxing, we saw racing, we saw skateboarding, dog walking. Like, they always just go to the next degree with their next game. So I'm super excited for this. And a global launch for like the first time is super fantastic. I cannot wait for this one. This is one of my most anticipated games this year.
Very nice, my friend. Yeah, it looks pretty cool from the trailer. And I love, again, what I'm excited about more than anything from this is like, it looks just like it's going to be a little bit less soap opera-y than some of the Yakuza games, and it's just a little bit more grounded. And that's kind of what I'm looking for from these type of games, because I like, I don't mind it when Yakuza does some weird stuff, but it was, especially playing Like a Dragon in particular, was like, it went too far in the deep end for me. So I don't know if I was going to be too into that. But again, I'm excited to maybe check out more, maybe with Judgment, which again, we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. Next up, though, Death Stranding Director's Cut was once again shown. This was announced a few weeks ago during E3, but we finally got more info about this. So they're bringing new weapons, combat mechanics, new cars and other vehicles, new story missions, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's going to be out September 24th. Now, we actually got a quick update on the PlayStation blog about this. They actually defined the fact that it is, in fact, a $10 upgrade for anyone who owns the PS4 version. So it's not a Ghost of Tsushima situation where there's this whole expansion and you have to buy the extra content and it's like $30 to upgrade. No, it's just straight up. If you own Death Stranding on PS4, $10. So I'm actually pretty excited to check this out again. I never played Death Stranding. We talked about it on the show before. And I'm excited maybe just to wait for this version to come out and then try this version. Although it is coming out kind of in a busy time. Like it's out the same, like the week before basically Lost Judgment and then the week after Deathloop. So it's like, it's kind of sandwiched in the middle of a whole bunch of other games to play. But I'm excited maybe to try this one. What about you, Matt?
I don't know. I don't know if this is enough for me to go back. I fell off of the original one probably 10 to 20 hours in. And this, again, looks just more of it. I do appreciate that they're apparently, you know, adding more to the melee. They're doing more stuff to kind of, you know, flesh it out. I know the Ghost of Tsushima stuff was announced right after we recorded last week, so I'm much more excited for that than I am for this. I am just kind of generally sour on PlayStation's whole pay more for the next-gen version, especially when Xbox seems to be doing the polar opposite with their play anywhere, get the game no matter what option that, you know, whatever you want. I think it's more understanding with Ghost of Tsushima to an extent just because of all the added content. You know, it seems a little bit more of like an expansion. I don't mind paying extra for that. I think it's kind of ridiculous that they're charging you just for the upgrade to PS5. So...
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just Xbox, too. I mean, it's pretty much most of the third parties are doing that the same way. So, I mean, like, unless your name is Call of Duty or Battlefield, like, almost every other game is a free upgrade. So, it's just, it is a shame to see that. And, I mean, again, if there's enough story content in there that for this one, it might be worth the $10. I mean, who knows? But I guess we'll see about that. And then the last thing we saw to kind of round out the state of play was the one thing we were told we were going to see ahead of time, which was Deathloop. So we got basically an extensive gameplay demo of the game shown. It looks like more Deathloop. It looks more like, you know, Dishonored than I was expecting. So I don't know where I am with this game, just because we've talked about it before, but like Arcane games are always hit or miss with me. Like I love the worlds they create and the characters that they have. But man, the gameplay just never hooks me with those games. So I am hoping maybe this is the one that does it. Question mark? What about you, Matt?
I am with you to an extent. I am actually quite excited for this. I kind of like the idea of this whole, you know, secondary, the antagonist can kind of invade your game and you can kind of go up against your friends and stuff. I think that mechanically it looks really interesting. I'm with you. It looks much more like Dishonored than I think I expected. I loved the first Dishonored. I played it completely. Dishonored 2, I started and then fell off. For no particular good reason. I just don't think it grabbed me as much. So I'm very curious to get my hands on this one. I am probably going to be picking it up, you know, on launch because I am excited about it. But I'm kind of curious to see if it's going to hold me the entire way through. I like the kind of setup. I like the kind of time loop mechanics of trying to figure out how to do it perfectly. So there's a lot there that makes me excited. I'm just curious to actually get my hands on it and play it and see if it's kind of stick the landing for me.
And more than anything, I really like the tone of this game as well. Like I love kind of the whole motif it's going with the visuals and the music. So yeah, like it's a game that I want to like, and I hope that it's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, I'm interested in checking it out too. Again, September is becoming a busier month for games right now. So I don't know how much time I'm going to be able to carve out for it, but I know at least one of us will be playing it because I know at least you'll be playing it. So at least we'll have that to talk about. And that kind of rounds out the state of play. So Matt, what did you think about the show overall? Do you think it was a good state of play, bad one, mediocre one? What did you think overall?
I think it was fine. There were some things that jumped out at me. You know, Moss, more Sifu, Lost Judgment, and Deathloop were kind of the big ones for me. I think overall it was okay. I just kind of maybe and maybe this is my own fault, expected a little more from it, especially this being their kind of whole post E3 thing, right? Like, there was a lot of hype leading up to this one, a lot of like, what is Sony going to do next? So I don't think we saw a ton of what's coming later this year. We know stuff through September pretty much, but we don't really still know what's going on with them October, November, or December. Yeah. So I think it was fine. What about you, Ryan? Like, did this do much for you? What are your feelings on this?
No, I'm in the same boat again, especially because we talked about a few games there where I was just like shrugging pretty much when we were trying to discuss them. Because yeah, there were some standouts, but yeah, you're right. It very much actually felt like an indie state of play. They just didn't label it as one because there were a couple like there were a couple games from Sega and then a couple from Sony. So there was some love from some exclusive games that are higher profile, but yeah, it was fine. It exists, you know. Yeah. I'm glad that at least we got a lot of September games out of this. Like that's the borderline more than anything. But again, a lot of stuff that they showed too, like we already kind of knew about. So it was good to get some updates on some games maybe that we needed to see. And I'm hoping that next month maybe we get another state of play where they finally tell us when Horizon's coming out, or you know what else is going on this fall from Sony. Because as of right now, nobody has any idea at this point. So There you go. That was the state of play. Also, before we go real quick, sorry, not go, but move on. Lost Judgment. They confirmed that it is a free upgrade to PS5 for that version of the game. Unlike a certain other game we just talked about.
So weird, considering Judgment, the Judgment upgrade to PS5 costs. Like the base game, you have to pay for the upgrade path, but I guess the sequel, they're not doing that. Whatever. I'm just glad it's coming.
It's very silly. It's very silly. I just had to rub it in because we just talked about Death Stranding. All right.
Yeah.
Next up, new games are coming to PlayStation Now in July. So we got Red Dead Redemption 2, which is going to be available until November 1st. Neo 2, moving out. God of War, Judgment, the original, until October 4th. And then Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 and NASCAR Heat. So quite a selection of games. And I hinted at Judgment because I'm like, you know, do I sign up for PlayStation Now maybe to try Judgment? Because maybe I play it first before the new one comes out rather than going to go buy it. Especially because I think I still have a free trial because I've never really tried out PlayStation Now. So maybe now is the time I do that. I don't know. Do you think I think this is a pretty good lineup though. What do you think about this, Matt?
I think it's a fantastic lineup. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to get people to kind of jump on the service. I think like I don't think there's a single bad game on this list. Like Olympic Games and NASCAR Heat aren't for me, but I don't doubt that the people that are looking for those games will enjoy them. I think this is really, really strong. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to get people to jump on if they're not looking to play one of those games specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Like, again, if there's like one or two games here that you're looking for, like, again, if Lost Judgment looked cool to you, then you should probably play Judgment first before it comes out, and it's right here to go play. There's that option. Or even games like Neo 2, I think are awesome, or even just having Red Dead Redemption 2 kind of come on the service, although it's been on Game Pass twice now. Now finally coming to PlayStation Now is pretty cool, even though it is leaving at the end of the year. So cool stuff there for PlayStation Now. Next up, this news story caused quite the conversation yesterday between me and Sean, but we'll see what Matt has to think about this one. Ubisoft have announced the future of the Assassin's Creed franchise will be in the form of a joint project between Ubisoft Montreal and Ubisoft Quebec called Assassin's Creed Infinity. It will be a live service game of some kind, because we don't actually know too much about it, that will replace the traditional Assassin's Creed release model. So no more yearly or even bi-yearly Assassin's Creed games anymore. This is it. This is the rest of the Assassin's Creed games are this one game. So Matt, again, Sean and I talked at length about this one yesterday, but I kind of wanted to know what your take is on this topic with Assassin's Creed.
I'm not surprised, honestly. I really thought that they were going to kind of continue more along the Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla side, because it seems like they were really trying to dig in and focus on story. But before that point, I really felt like live service for Assassin's Creed is not really surprising. Mm-hmm. I'm just so curious to see what this means, because Jason Schreier, who originally reported this before Ubisoft came out and started talking about it, basically said that it's still very, very early. We don't know if this is going to be purely single-player content just delivered through, you know, a live service motif where you'll have different things go on and added to the game, or if it's going to be something, you know, that has multiplayer ingrained into it as well. This is going to be one of those things that I think will either make or break Assassin's Creed in this state. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of having kind of one persistent game, like one persistent Assassin's Creed that gets added to. So like if they add in DLC that, I don't know, goes to Tokyo and that excites you can kind of pick up that portion of it without possibly paying full price because you already have the kind of launcher, you have the kind of base for it. But if what they're going to be doing is charging you full price for Assassin's Creed Infinity and then full price afterwards for every single thing that they add on, or if the microtransactions are going to be way out of whack, I don't know. I have really mixed feelings about this right now, just because I don't think they know exactly what it is. And I just, it sounds very, very early. It seems like, you know, 2024, 2025 at the earliest.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm more nervous than I am excited. What about you, Ryan? What are your feelings on this one?
Yeah, I think it depends on what direction they go with it as far as how I'm going to feel about it, because if they go heavily into the multiplayer direction, I'm probably out because I don't really love Assassin's Creed multiplayer, and the last thing I want to do is play like a Destiny-esque game or Division-like game, but with Assassin's Creed where, like, for example, if you want to do a specific assassination, you got to get like 3 of your friends together, or more likely 3 randoms together to go, you know, take someone out. Like that's not at all appealing for me. If it's the idea of, hey, let's take Assassin's Creed Valhalla and then you'll have like an add-on pack a year later that gives you like a different assassin in a different area, then yeah, that gets me infinitely more excited. Like if it's an evolving single player game, then yeah, I think I'm down for something like that, because again, like I don't mind live service games. Again, I play a ton of Final Fantasy 14 as it is, and that game basically gets like like every 2 years gets a single player expansion added to it that just happens to have parts of it that you have to play with other people. So I don't mind that model, and that's maybe the model I wouldn't mind for this. Like I thought about the idea of like, I'm pretty sure what'll happen is you'll maybe play as like a customizable character in the real world, like in the present day, that like goes to the Animus, and then like each you can go to a bunch of different time periods. It is a bunch of different assassins and play that way. Like that's how I'm imagining the story for this game maybe playing out. So I'm interested. I'm interested to see more.
You make an actual really good point, something that I hadn't considered. If they're making shorter, tighter, more condensed Assassin's Creed and maybe smaller, tighter worlds, but with greater variety, that would be way more up my alley, because I do think of something about the Assassin's Creed. They've gone just way too big, and I don't think there's a need for that. So I think you might be onto something there. If you are going to have smaller, more condensed Assassin's Creed experiences that just live through Infinity, that might be, you know, $40 or $50 rather than the 80 or 90 that we're paying now in Canada. I think that's something that could be very exciting. I think you might be onto something there, and I hope you're right. Yeah,
I hope so too. Like again, I think that there's a lot of potential with this announcement, but like you said, it's very far away. Like it's 2024, 2025 at the earliest. So we'll just wait to kind of judge the game for when we actually see what this actually is. But yeah, it's interesting that we now know that there won't be another Assassin's Creed game until then. That basically means like we're not going to get one for another 3 years. Also, this really puts into light why they were doubling down on more content for Valhalla, because they talked about it at E3 being like, hey, we got another season pass coming for Valhalla. And now that move makes so much more sense, knowing that this is what's happening in the future. So that'll be supported through 2022. And then beyond that, it'll be waiting 2 years or 3 years for this game to come out. So there you go. All right. Last news story before we jump into the carpool. And as you alluded to, Matt, we kind of missed out on this one last week, so we should talk about it here. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut was confirmed, which of course contains a whole new expansion going to the island of Iki and kind of exploring there, and as well as a whole bunch of other quality of life improvements. However, of course, as we kind of alluded to, there's a bit of a catch as far as the upgrade path is concerned, of course. So if you want the breakdown, it'll cost $20 US to upgrade from the original version of the Director's Cut on PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5. If you want to upgrade from the PlayStation 4 base game to the PlayStation 5 Director's Cut, then you have to pay $30. Whereas the Director's Cut PS4 to PS5 is $10. So there you go. That's quite the thing. I don't know how you feel about this one, but honestly, it really reminds me of Final Fantasy VII, but if Square decided to charge you $10 on top of the expansion for Yuffie, which I don't know if I like them doing that, because it's almost a feel bad. Like, I'm almost tempted just to upgrade to just the Director's Cut on PlayStation 4 and calling it a day. But that's kind of how I think I'm maybe going to go in this direction. But Matt, what did you think about this story? Because people had mixed opinions about this one.
I'm both very, very excited. Ghost of Tsushima was one of my favorite games of last year. I had an absolute blast playing it, and I don't usually chase platinums, but I actually did platinum that one. So I'm very excited to go back into that world and have a new island to explore with more going on and with more to do. So in that respect, I'm very excited. And again, the PS5 upgrades do excite me. Like, the adaptive triggers, the 60 frames per second, or the targeted 60 frames per second, all of that. I'm extremely excited to finally get into that in just, what is a month and a half. It's coming out end of August.
Yeah.
The pricing structure severely bothers me. I just think that, and not to kind of crap on any other company, this feels like a very Nintendo-esque move who have very weird pricing structures, especially when it comes to not discounting games, even though they're 6 years old. Yeah. This feels to me like a very PS3 Sony ego decision, where like you see the rest, like you alluded to, Ryan, the rest of the industry is giving either free upgrades or, giving, like with Xbox, they kind of just give you the new edition. I don't have an issue paying for the expansion. I don't have an issue with paying for the new island. I think that's totally reasonable given, the amount of work that probably went into it. If the original base game has anything to show for it, they gave Legends for free. I don't have an issue paying for more content. I do have a problem with paying for just the PS5 upgrade. I think that sucks. And this kind of seems to be the trend with PlayStation, and I hope it's something that they can kind of figure out. I don't anticipate that they will. I think this is kind of going to be their new standard going forward, but I am very excited for what the game is promising. I just think the pricing model around it kind of sucks. And again, I have no problem paying for the expansion. I just wish I wasn't paying for the adaptive triggers and the targeted 60 frames per second alongside that, if that makes sense. Especially
because like the game got a PS4 upgrade, a PS5 upgrade for 60 frames per second already with the PlayStation 4 version. So even the 60 frames per second thing isn't really too much of an upgrade. So yeah, that's why I'm torn on this one, because as much as I would want to play a PS5 native version of the game, I don't know. I think $30 is too steep. And again, like to your point, I don't have a problem paying for extra content. Like I didn't have a problem paying for the Yuffie DLC for Final Fantasy VII, but
exactly.
They did. Square Enix didn't make us pay for that upgrade. When I play games on Xbox, I don't ever have to worry about this. So it is definitely a tougher sell, I think. And again, they're just banking on the Sony quality, being the thing that's worth the $10 extra, I think, which is kind of where I think that they're coming from with that one. But yeah. It's interesting to see them go down this route, but I think this is the same pricing structure we're going to probably see with Horizon when it comes out. Like we were wondering, because that's a cross-gen title, and we obviously know the PS5 version is going to be $70 for Horizon. So I imagine that this is the similar pricing structure we're to see for Horizon when it comes out too. So we got our answer.
I think you're right.
Yeah. All right. One last thing before we go, of course, on the supersized episode of the PlayStation Drive, we go to the carpool. This question comes to us from Todd Oxtra. Toxtra, now, if you would like to have your question read on the show, you can hit us up on Twitter. I tweet out, so just follow me at Ryan Turford every Friday or every Thursday. We tweet out a link to submit questions, as well as you can go in our Discord, which is in the show notes, and leave your questions there. So Todd asks, knowing that PlayStation would probably not have the finances to make a true Game Pass Ultimate rival, what would you like to see Sony do with a PlayStation Now? I'd like to see them add a virtual console for PS1, PS2 games like Switch has created for Nintendo Switch Online. Todd, have no idea if they actually made that a real thing where you could buy PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games, I'd buy all of them, because I'm a crazy person who loves that era of games, and I would totally pay to play all those games on my PlayStation 5. So they would get my money so fast to do that. As far as PlayStation Now, I think the biggest issue with this question as far as PlayStation Now is, I think, as we read off, PlayStation Now is getting good games. It's just the one advantage that Game Pass has beyond the cloud streaming, which I think is much better done on Xbox's servers, is the day-and-date releases. Like we don't have day-and-date releases on PlayStation Now, and that's really one of the biggest selling points of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Like knowing that with my subscription, I get Halo, I get Forza day one, and these are big titles. They're not just little indie games, they're big titles. But not only that, you also get indie games day one, like Chris Tales, a game I'm very excited to play this month, which is a turn-based RPG, is a day one Game Pass game. So at that point, why would I buy it on PlayStation, right? Or so I think that's what PlayStation Now is really missing more than anything. Yes, we're seeing that more on the PlayStation Plus side, or the odd time we will get a day one release, like we did with Plague Tale, for example, with the PS5 version of that game. But I think it's a much harder sell without that, especially when you compare it to Microsoft's side. But Matt, what do you think about this question?
I think you're spot on, Ryan. And as to Todd's question, I don't think the problem is finances. I just don't think that they want to do it. I think they're totally locked in on the belief that if they do it, and if they do make things day and date, they're going to lose out on a lot of sales, which probably to some extent is true. But I think you're completely on. If they told me tomorrow that new games were going to be day and date and they're going to be making more of an effort to put, new indies on, I would sign up immediately, in perpetuity, forever. Like, they'd have my money. And as you said, being able to play PS1, PS2 games on there, again, easy sell. I'd be there for a bunch of those as well. I also think one of the biggest problems with PS Now right now is that there are no PS5 games on there. Yep. Even the PS4 games, if you're playing on PS Now, on PS5, you don't get the upgraded version to make the PS5 a better experience. I just don't understand why. Like, if those games already exist there, and if you're playing on PS5 and were to play one of them through the PlayStation Plus collection that has the update, you can do that. Yet on playing on PlayStation Now, you can't. Like, there's no upgrade path, so, or like, at all. So I think that just, like, I don't think they want to sacrifice the money that they get from putting out first-party titles at full price in exchange for the goodwill that I think Microsoft has exceptionally built, along with, Microsoft still sees huge sales for the games that are even on Game Pass. I just don't think PlayStation's willing to do it. I just don't think they want to do it. And I don't think that they care. Even, look at, what was it, just a few months ago, the Poland got the whole PlayStation Plus video collection. Like, it just seems like they are not making any attempt to make these services any more than they are, because, like you said, in talking about Tsushima, they're counting on their PlayStation quality to kind of sell everything rather than the goodwill of the consumer. So I just don't think we're ever going to see, unless they start losing, unless Microsoft starts coming up and they're making hand over fist money with Game Pass and there's, everything's selling well, I don't see PlayStation making any changes or trying to improve the service if they have absolutely no reason to.
Yeah, and especially with PlayStation 5 games, like, you hit the nail on the head. They don't want to do that because they want your $70 for them. Like, especially, like, we don't see those games go on sale at all either. So, like, for the same reason, like, I don't think we're ever, like, it's going to probably be a year before Ratchet and Clank goes on sale. So, like, are they going to ever bring it to PlayStation Now? Maybe in like 3 or 4 years. So, yeah, it's going to be a long time before we start seeing PlayStation 5 games, even on the service. And I want to see them do more with it, but at the same time, I can understand it from their perspective. And again, PlayStation gamers are not really used to that path anyways. Like, a lot of them really like to buy games so day one. So yeah, I think more than anything, I think that's what they would need to do to compete with Microsoft on an equal playing field. And I just don't think they want to do that. But anyways, we got to go. But before Matt plugs go.
Yeah, you can find me over at youtube.com/burnoutbrighter. We are getting very, very close to our 100th episode in just a few weeks, and we have massive, massive plans for that. We're going to have a lot going on, so keep it locked there if you're curious. And this weekend, I'm going to be playing in the finals of a Mario Golf tournament. I will have those links over on my Twitter if you're curious to come watch and support. We're raising money for Extra Life. The first round was last weekend. I cleared it to the finals. That's going to happen this weekend. So if you're curious, come check us out there as well. Find me on Twitter at burnout_Matt.
Now, quick talk before we go on. Where did they find the Mario Golf tournament? What Twitch channel is that on YouTube? That's
on Please Be Excited. I'll have those links over on my Twitter as well, but you can find them at twitch.tv/pleasebeexcited or on YouTube at the same. The VOD from last week is there. We've raised over $1,000 so far, and round 2 for the semifinals and the finals will be this weekend, so get stoked.
Very nice, my friend. We'll be cheering for you. We hope you take it home for us here at the PlayStation Drive. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can also find us on Twitter at, well, we don't really have a Twitter yet, but we have a Patreon account, though. So patreon.com/YumiCapri, or on YouTube, because we have a YouTube channel now, Matt. I don't know if people knew this. YouTube.com/gobbledygook. Just search for the PlayStation Drive on YouTube, or it's in the show notes. You can go check us out there because we need people to subscribe, Matt. When we hit 100 subscribers, it'll be youtube.com/the PlayStation Drive. So that's how that's gonna go. As well as you can find us on podcast feeds around the globe. So for Matt Sowensi, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 8 of the PlayStation Drive, and we out.